Coming up on Currently, we have an update on a years-long Old Mission Peninsula lawsuit, an update on the cherry crop, why we can't insure trees, plus TCAPS has their sights on a $17 million indoor sports complex. That's all ahead on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the amazing journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. We have a great show for you. Beth Milligan, head writer for Traverse City Ticker, is here as always, along with returning guest Ellie Katz from Interlochen Public Radio. This podcast was recorded on Thursday, July 10th at 5 p.m. The Tigers are 59 and 35. That said, things may change by the time you're watching or listening. And support for Currently comes from Golden Fowler Home Furnishings, located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's home fashion elevated. And from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. You can visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. And support also comes from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City. It's a chill hangout with a full bar in a low-key setting. Well, I am super excited to have you back, Ellie Katz, and of course, Beth Milligan, as always, the head writer. How are you both doing?
Doing great.
Doing good. It's summertime. Yeah.
Summertime in northern Michigan.
We're like into it now. Cherry Fest is behind us. Like, it's going fast.
It's true.
I feel like it is. And I know, like we were just talking before, the show, that I was like, I do feel that sense of dread that it's almost over, but it's not. Like, that's just in my head.
Yeah, we still got months.
We're on the upswing. Yeah.
Why do I feel like that? What is happening with
It's
me?
summer anxiety. It's very common in northern Michigan.
We all struggle from summer anxiety. I love that. Well, I am super excited about this first story because this is a huge, huge story. It's been years in the making, Beth, and you covered it so incredibly well. This goes back at least 5 years, but I think longer than that, maybe decades, between wineries on Old Mission Peninsula and the Peninsula Township. So walk us through what was happening in those literal years and what was just decided in court.
Yeah, there had been years of discussion about the zoning ordinance in Peninsula Township. A lot of the wineries were very unhappy with the zoning regulations there, felt that they were unnecessarily cumbersome, even unconstitutional, were very restrictive to their business practices, everything from their operational hours to being able to have events to the way that their merchandise was marketed.
Merchandise?
All kinds of issues out in the township. And I think at a certain point, when the wineries felt that it was not being resolved through a zoning update process, which the township had talked about for a long time, but was not moving at the pace that the wineries wanted, they had filed this lawsuit. So this has been going on for several years, the lawsuit itself, on top of the zoning discussions. On Monday, there was a ruling. We have been expecting the ruling for months. Sometimes it's a little difficult with the courts to tell exactly when it's going to happen. And so in my case, it happened on a late Monday afternoon after I'd already written the next day's story, and I was like going to write a news story, which happens in the news business. I'm sure Ellie knows well. But yeah, so this federal lawsuit was resolved, and it was, in most regards, I think, considered to be a very significant win for the wineries. They were awarded nearly $50 million in damages.
Oh, wow.
For
so is that in like lost profit or potential profit?
Yes, the lawsuit has a very detailed explanation of how those damages were calculated, but they were related specifically to the wineries being restricted from hosting events. That was one of several township zoning ordinances that the judge, Paul Maloney, in U.S. District Court found unconstitutional. There were some pretty telling things about the order. Reading through a judge's order, you can often get a sense of his tone or her tone a little bit. He seemed to find the testimony from the wineries to be very compelling. He said it told a single story through 12 lenses, which was the number of witnesses that the wineries had called, that the zoning ordinance was unreasonable, burdened their operations, and at times made them rethink continuing their enterprises on the Old Mission Peninsula.
Yeah, right.
So he also pointed out that Peninsula Township did not call a single witness and instead relied on government documents that were sometimes decades old. Protect the Peninsula, which was a citizen group that was allowed to intervene in the case.
Mm-hmm. And they've been around since 1979 or something?
Yes, they've been around for decades. They were allowed to be a part of the case as well. They called one expert forward, but the judge found that expert to not be credible. So I think the witness testimony was a big part of this case. He described the winery witnesses as model witnesses, said they were tough to cross-examine. He found them to be very compelling. And he said, ultimately, at the end of the day, and I'm quoting here, the court has no trouble concluding that the facts at trial largely favored the plaintiffs, the wineries. And he made it pretty clear that he felt strongly about their case. So they were awarded these damages. Those amounts are spread out across, the nearly dozen wineries who are in the lawsuit. So they're often in the 6 to 7 figures per winery. The largest was Chateau Chantal at nearly $12 million.
Oh, wow. Wow. So what's the response from Peninsula Township and from Protect the Peninsula at this point?
Sure. So yeah, we were able to connect with them. They also did later provide more detailed statements following some time to process the order. They, I think to say that they're disappointed is fair. That's a very large damage amount.
Sure.
And we don't know right now how those damages are going to be covered. So
I can't imagine that they just have $50 million sitting in the bank.
Well, most municipalities, especially one the size of Peninsula Township, do not know. Municipalities do carry municipal insurance.
Sure.
What we don't know in this case yet is how much insurance they are covering and carrying. So whether they have an amount to cover $50 million, we don't know yet. They have indicated this week that they are planning to hold a special meeting, and they will be, it sounds like, addressing some of the questions they received from the public. I think residents in particular, and I should mention I'm a Peninsula Township resident, so I'm curious about this from both a resident and a journalist perspective. I think there's concern among residents that there will be some sort of assessment that the residents themselves will be responsible for if Peninsula Township cannot pay for these damages. I do expect the township to likely address that publicly in the coming days and weeks. Protect the Peninsula said that they found the order to be confusing and puzzling. One aspect of the order is they did not provide injunctive relief, meaning they didn't deal with the zoning ordinance necessarily itself.
Yeah.
The zoning ordinance that was at the center of the case had already been repealed.
Okay.
So damages were being calculated from the past when these restrictive zoning ordinances were in place. Peninsula Township has since updated its zoning ordinance. There are still some issues with the new ordinance. The wineries still don't like it, but it's not the center of the case.
Okay.
So really the judge was just dealing with the past version of the ordinance, not the current one that's in place.
Okay.
Which Protect the Peninsula felt like was a win. They felt, well, the zoning rules are still the same. The wineries didn't win on every front.
For now, but
For now.
I mean, could you maybe anticipate that the wineries would say, hey, it's still not right?
That could be another potential issue in the future, or the peninsula could also look at it itself, voluntarily. I think what is the big question still to come next are, how are the damages going to be covered if, in fact, that is going to be assessed? Because the other question is, will they appeal? Protect the Peninsula could appeal. Peninsula Township could appeal. There are some challenges with that when damages this large are involved. They're going to have to make some decisions about that. They did say Peninsula Township said, in our view, the ruling reflects significant legal and factual issues that warrant serious scrutiny. They're reviewing the order. We believe there are substantial grounds for appeal, but they have not made a decision on that yet.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, I mean, it may not be over.
It may not be over.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering, and I know you're a resident, and obviously I've been especially looking at public comment on the Traverse City Ticker Facebook post about this. It really feels as though most people are in favor of what happened in this recent lawsuit. I mean, in
the outcome.
Support, of the outcome, but also in support of the wineries. And I wonder, too, when you started a group like Protect My Peninsula, and I believe me, as someone who I believe strongly in conservation, and I understand the idea of protecting the character of a place. I mean, I grew up here. I get it, However, when you are doing something that so incredibly restricts some of those key players in creating that character, where they have to sell land, they are no longer able to afford to farm even, aren't you changing the character because you're selling it to developers and then they're building new subdivisions and they're putting up new things? Like, isn't that in itself just kind of like, are you really getting what you're after?
Well, Judge Maloney did reference that. And I would say, yeah, I agree with you, Crystal. I mean, I've covered the case for years, and I have seen fluctuating public opinion. Of course, no township is unified in how it believes about something. There's still divisive opinions about that. But I have seen it change over time. I think there was a concern among a lot of residents about that the wineries would become too commercial, that there would be too many weddings and traffic and events.
Sure.
That's a natural concern about over-commercialization. But there are, of course, on the flip side, many residents who enjoy the wineries themselves or believe they contribute to the character of Peninsula Township. I will note that the judge said in his order, he referred to what you referred to, which even though Peninsula Township has said its zoning rules are intended to preserve the agricultural character. The judge wrote, and I'm quoting here, quote, "They in fact make operating a farm or winery more difficult. Farms and wineries need alternate revenue streams to survive." We're certainly seeing that in the age of climate change and different weather events that, you can have a year where you have a complete loss of a cherry crop, for example. And these other revenue streams help them kind of diversify and stay alive. So he pointed out, the alternative to operating a failing business is to sell the farmland for residential development.
Yeah.
And he said in his order, the zoning ordinance provisions do not advance the township's interest in maintaining rural character or keeping land in agriculture. So he also found an issue with that.
Okay, well, look at that. I didn't even know that. Now I feel a little bit smarter. I was just like, listen,
I know.
that's
Oh, it's a good
fantastic.
But yes, obviously still more to come, I think, and many of the issues that we mentioned, but a significant chapter forward and moving this case ahead.
Well, obviously, we know that the Ticker is going to keep covering this, and thank you for writing 2 stories. I appreciate
Talk
that.
about the other one later.
The news, listen, the news sometimes doesn't fit on a schedule. That's why you
very
all
true.
have to be very flexible and agile news people. We are going to kind of stay on the topic and go to your story, Ellie, about the cherry crop. And I mean, honestly, the Cherry Festival just happened.
Yeah.
We were just talking about how we feel like, oh my gosh, is summer over? But cherry season is actually in full swing right now in the Grand Traverse region. What does that mean for the cherry crop? How did the early spring / very late spring that we had, how did that affect it?
Yeah, good question. It's kind of a mixed bag. But like you mentioned, you can have a disaster cherry crop year. That is exactly what happened last year with sweet cherries. So we've got our tart cherries, got our sweet cherries, and last year the federal government declared a disaster and helped growers with low interest loans to kind of cover some of the costs that they had put in because they weren't going to recover those costs by selling cherries that year. This year's looking decent for sweets. Okay. Growers probably started harvesting this week, a little bit after Cherry Festival. And U-Pick should be peaking pretty soon. If you want to get some fresh sweet cherries, go pick them off the tree. There's still a little bit of worry about brown rot, which is this fungal disease, and about spotted wing Drosophila, which is this invasive fly that lays its eggs in the cherries, so you can't do anything with them after that. But for now, it's looking pretty good. It's a little patchy. There was some, a hail that might have damaged some fruit and some trees a few weeks back. I don't know if you remember that weird hailstorm.
It's a weird storm.
Yeah. But sweets are looking okay. When it comes to tarts, this year's looking a little rough.
So tarts were fine last year.
Tarts were good last year.
But this year, not so fine.
Not so fine, no. So to put it into context, our best guess for how many millions of pounds of cherries our region can grow and harvest is about 180 million pounds of tart cherries.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of pounds.
It's a lot, yeah. Last year we harvested about 100 million pounds.
Okay, doing okay.
Yeah. This year, though, we're only on track to harvest about 30 million pounds of cherries.
And that's both kinds?
Sorry, that's just tart cherries.
Just tart cherries.
Yeah.
Holy smoke stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a pretty strong dichotomy, It's on the one hand, it's kind of just what farming is. From year to year, things change a lot. You never know how the weather's going to be. Like you said, we had that weird kind of cold spring, early summer, and we had some not freezing weather in late April, but kind of chilly, windy weather that might have damaged some blossoms. But then on the other hand, I've talked to growers, I've talked to researchers who say, regardless of all that, it's just becoming more and more volatile.
Yeah.
It's becoming harder to grow cherries. to the point of, you made, Beth, with the wineries and the lawsuit. It's people are looking to diversify their revenue streams. They're growing apricots. They're growing apples. It's not just cherries anymore. And, we're definitely seeing that bear out more and more.
Well, I mean, we are the cherry capital.
Yeah.
So, I'm really hopeful that we can continue to grow cherries. And I know, we just talked about this as having to be agile and flexible in the news business. I mean, you have to be agile and flexible in the farming business. But
To the extreme, yeah.
losing the opportunity to do so, you can only diversify so much, and you can only handle so many difficult weather patterns. And that's, that to me, that feels like a real worry.
Yeah. And, you've got the uncertainty of the weather, which is just a constant. But then there's a lot of uncertainty, floating around with tariffs, with, migrant workers, things like this that I think has kind of thrown a lot of things into question this season. It's still kind of just a wait and see game right now. From the people I talked to, there were still, those documented seasonal workers coming to help with harvest and production. It's not like people didn't want to come for fear of immigration enforcement. When it comes to tariffs, there's a lot of concern about that, how that could impact farmers' input costs, like fertilizer. Those went up a ton this year. But then also the output, like the actual fruits. We export a lot to Mexico, to Canada, to India, Southeast Asia. And so it's still kind of unclear what that impact's going to be.
Well, I know you're going to keep on top of the cherries, right?
Yeah, cherries, apples after that. There's always something.
In the meantime, though, I will say that I had some cherries right off the tree.
Oh, nice.
At one Beth Milligan's farm.
That's true.
And I was like, well, this is pretty good.
Yeah, so that's as good as it gets.
That is as good as it gets. Thank you for that. When we come back, we're going to talk about the TC Fieldhouse, and we do have an update on those Rotary Square designs. Plus, Ellie's going to talk trees. Specifically, can you insure them? That's all ahead on Currently, but right now I'd love to have a moment to talk about our sponsor, Golden Fowler Home Furnishings, our key underwriter here. And, I love to browse when I'm shopping. I just like to browse. I like to walk around. I like to touch things. I like to just take my time when I'm shopping, not really have anything specific in mind. Just kind of let the moment take me, But when I'm doing that and I'm looking around a showroom that's filled with great stuff, I'm constantly thinking I wish I could take that home and that too. Well, if you're like me, now is our time. Thanks to Golden Fowler's Home Furnishings Floor Sample Blockbuster. It's going on right now. You can see every single floor sample, and it's marked down with store-wide savings, which of course is already great. But then you get an extra 20% off on top of that. Yes, really, already marked down. Tack on an extra 20% off, and it's right there for you to take home. That beautiful sectional you've been eyeing, the dining set whispering your name. This is the perfect time to refresh a space in your home or finally snag that statement piece you've been dreaming about. And I probably don't have to say this, but I'm going to anyway. Don't wait. Things are going very fast. It's the Floor Sample Blockbuster going on right now at Golden Fowler Home Furnishings right on Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's furniture that you'll love to come home to. And welcome back to Currently, and we are going to shift gears over here, and we're going to talk about the TC Fieldhouse, which is another story that you wrote this week. This has been a long discussed project in some element. We've had TC Tourism that has talked about the need for an indoor sports complex. You've had area schools talking about the need. Now, this could actually be happening thanks to sort of a private-public agreement. Can you explain what is a field house? Where is this possible field house going to be, and how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah, so this is something that's been discussed by the school system, but also by community leaders for years, including like Traverse City Tourism, some different family community groups, athletic groups, the need for some kind of year-round indoor facility in Traverse City.
So that's what a field house is.
That's what a field house is. It's really just an indoor sports complex.
Okay.
And that provides the possibility, obviously having the winters that we do up here, of having dedicated turf, courts, track lanes for year-round practices and tournaments. So there have been various proposals for this over the years. The latest iteration is that TCAP's trustees on Monday will consider approving architectural design services. It's a $650,000 contract, so it's a significant design project.
Oh, sure, yeah.
To build a multi-purpose field house on Carlisle Road, which is property TCAPS owns right near East Middle School.
Okay.
It's an estimated $17.3 million facility that would be significantly funded in part from Traverse City Tourism and the Northern Michigan Homefield Alliance, which is a relatively new nonprofit, but has some partners who have been working for a long time on this issue,
Okay.
who would help provide the funding for it. The idea being that the outside private community investment would help TCAPS build this facility that would be used in part by TCAPS, but also used in part by the community.
Yeah, sure.
So that there could have, Traverse City Tourism, for example, could work with the school system to have some statewide kind of tournaments, perhaps, or some things that might bring some big activity in the off season to Traverse City.
Or, fill hotel rooms.
Fill hotel rooms, keep, restaurants, businesses employed year round. They're really focused on trying to bolster those kind of shoulder seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see things like the Keystone Soccer Complex, those big tournaments can bring in a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of tourism money.
Yeah, absolutely. But what is public sentiment about this so far? I mean, it sounds to me like the idea is, it is a public-private agreement, right? I mean, where you're going to have school use. It's going to be paid somewhat with public dollars, but you also have a lot of private dollars coming in, including TC Tourism dollars. So, it does feel a little bit more like a partnership. And I do know that TCAPS did have indoor soccer field, essentially field houses that were on a bond maybe in 2018, and it didn't pass.
So so just to clarify, there was discussion previously, the 2018 bond did have discussion about some sort of indoor facility. They do have funding remaining in that 2018 bond, and they can decide, the board can decide how that money is spent any number of ways, including the possibility of this project. There was discussion last year on the 2024 bond about including the field houses in that bond. They ultimately decided not to do that because, in part, they were so focused on so many different infrastructure projects in the schools that they didn't want to muddy the waters. But the discussion even at that time was still a hope that separately there could be a field house project.
Okay.
Originally, they were looking at the high schools for this, to put maybe a field house each at West and Central high schools. When I talked to John Van Wagner this week of TCAPS, he said the space is constrained, particularly on the Central High School campus.
Okay.
So the idea now is to build one large facility on the Carlisle property that all of the TCAP schools can use.
Sure, yeah.
And then have a future phase that maybe will have some smaller gyms at both of the high schools.
Yeah, I did see some comments saying, well, what about the West Side? We need one too. And the idea is like, okay, this is going to be big and everyone can use it.
Yeah, and there's only, if you're going to build one big facility, it's either going to be a little more on the West Side or on the East Side. There's no way to really get around that. But just to kind of break down the funding numbers, this Northern Michigan Homefield Alliance, this nonprofit, they are committing to try to fundraise at least $7 million of the initial construction cost.
Okay.
Traverse City Tourism is pledging a $500,000 sponsorship once the facility is completed, and then a 10-year sponsorship of $50,000 annually for a total commitment of $1 million. And then the remaining funding, so that would be about $8 million. The remaining $9 million plus would be potentially covered by those funds from the remaining 2018 bond.
All right.
So what I think we're going to see, though, is some discussion about this. One, when I talked to John Van Wagner, he said he believes trustees are really going to have to be confident that the fundraising is going to happen. So I think the nonprofit will be likely giving updates soon about what that looks like, the feasibility. There is a lot of community interest in this project, so it's possible they could find that fundraising support, but that's a big part of the project. It's really contingent on that moving forward. And he also said that design is really the first domino in this process. And we see this with a lot of projects. We talked about, DDA projects last week. It's the same thing. You have to kind of get through design to get a hard cost estimate. I mean, the $17 million is a rough estimate right now. But once you get through some engineering and architecture work, you really start to get a sense of like, these are what it's going to look like and this is what it's going to cost.
Okay.
And then that allows you to say, okay, what can we feasibly do with fundraising? Can we afford this project? Are there some things we leave out of the design or add to it? And then kind of move forward from there.
I feel like anyone who's ever built a house understands that, like, this is what I want, and this is what I could afford.
And I do, I will say I see comments a lot of times on the cost of design, which is expensive. And why do we need a design if we don't even know it's going to be built? But again, you really do have to usually go through at least the design process to get to the feasibility of financing and figure out if this is something you can move forward. That's hard to do hypothetically.
Yeah. Now, speaking of design, those two design concepts that we were talking about a number of design concepts for Rotary Square.
Right.
Last week on the show, and we've got two. It's down to two, right?
Yes.
And what are they?
Yeah.
Is it more nature? Is it more industry?
Yeah. So if you go to traversticker.com, we have the design concepts up there. And we also have a link to the Rotary Square website and the DDA website. So you can see them in more detail. And also there's an online survey. So if you couldn't go to the open house this week, there's time for you to weigh in. One is they're both kind of in the more of a natural park than like a hardscape plaza. Yeah. They've already moving in that direction. One is a little more regimented and it's like geometric layout.
Yeah, I see that.
The other is a little more kind of free flowing.
I like it.
I think they've called one the outdoor living room and one the Petoskey stone. Just kind of using
I
some
see that
references.
I mean, I like the Petoskey stone. That's the one I like.
Boom.
I do.
You're putting your coins on that one.
Vote for Petoskey stone.
And there's some certain elements in both, like a fish pass overlook or a small stage. There's some things that the community seems to be kind of agreeing on that they'd like to see, but there's still time to weigh in. And the ideas are going to kind of get down to a preferred concept in August. Again, get those cost estimates. And then figure out what they can maybe start doing construction-wise in the next year.
Okay, maybe I like the outdoor living room because I like that idea of like the overlook of Fish Pass.
And they may end up taking parts of both. It's not an either or. It kind of helps you get down into.
Why do I have to decide? That summer anxiety.
Yeah, summer anxiety.
I have summer anxiety. I have Rotary Square design anxiety. Well, yeah, definitely check that out at traversticker.com. We have another story to share. And Ellie, I just love the way your brain works because I feel like this too. We live in the United States where we can literally insure like anything. I mean, I've heard of, maybe like Tina Turner insuring her legs. Yeah, okay. Like this happens.
That's true.
So, and you can insure your crops. Farmers can insure their crops. I mean, that happens too. We were just talking about that with, the cherry farms. Now, why can't we insure trees?
It's a good question with a complicated answer. I first came across this during the reporting of the aftermath of the ice storm.
Yeah.
I think the last time I was on here was a week after.
That. Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time talking to, private landowners with just timber harvest that they kind of go to every 40 years. I talked to some maple producers. All these people got hit really hard. Yeah. I think I talked to one guy outside of Gaylord who lost something like 90% of the value of his timber. And that's a generational investment. It's something you want your kids to invest or to have. And there's no timber insurance for it. And it was just a weird thing to me. And so I looked into it. There's not a lot of people who study this. I think I found the one guy who kind of researches this at Auburn University.
Okay.
Basically, what it comes down to is that there is demand. There's people who would pay for timber insurance if it existed at a good price.
Right, sure.
The price is way too high right now. And that's because timber is just kind of hard to value. Right. You've got one property and maybe it's a really small property compared to a really, really big industrial property. You've got a bunch of different trees growing different ages, different species, different things that can affect them every year, bugs, weather, all these different things. It's
a lot of risk.
Yeah, a lot of risk, which, doesn't always scare away insurers, but it's just the cost of actually sending someone out there to do that, to value those trees is really high. Okay. And that gets passed along to the premiums, which are too high for people to want to pay right now. It's not impossible.
Right.
There are countries who do this. So you kind of have two models. One is what they do in China and France. There's kind of a similar situation in France where in the 90s and in the 2000s, there were these huge cyclones that wiped out really big portions of forest there and destroyed some timber value there. And the French government was like, okay, you have to buy timber insurance.
Okay.
Chinese government did a similar thing. You also have the Nordic model, which is basically all of these big cooperatives, all these landowners, small landowners who kind of came together and negotiated premiums on behalf of all those people.
Okay.
And then it also guaranteed insurance companies buyers.
So more of like a cooperative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, a cooperative. And so I was wondering, with more extreme weather events on the horizon, with the potential for more things like an ice storm or a tornado that could take out trees, might people be more willing to form a cooperative, do something like that? And the professor I talked to at Auburn said, yeah, maybe a little, but not enough to bring down premiums to make it actually affordable. Or
So
what people
still
wanna pay
probably
for.
not on the horizon, but at least people are talking.
Yeah, people are talking. And the one good thing, kind of in northern Michigan's sphere, is that after the ice storm, a lot of maple producers were kind of out on their lines. Those aren't insured, and those cost thousands and thousands of dollars when you have thousands of them destroyed at one time. And some insurers did come back and say, we'll back pay you for those. We'll insure you for those and help you buy more lines. So that was kind of a bright side.
I mean, that's a nice bright side.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I feel like Brett Favre like insured his arm.
There are some freaky examples out there.
Insure some trees.
Totally. We need enough Brett Favres to buy enough insurance is the problem.
Exactly. All right. Before we say goodbye, I have to ask you if you have anything that you're looking forward to this week. And I will start because my son, Logan, is turning 21.
Fun.
I know.
That's great.
And he is like the nicest kid. And he's going to like hang out with me at the Bare Naked Ladies, Sugar Ray, and Fastball show.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Some throwbacks there.
In St. Ignace. I love it. I mean, he's like, literally was born way after them. So I really love it. I'm super excited. Looking forward to that. How about you, Ellie?
I'm going to Blissfest this weekend, which I'm very excited about. Yeah.
Sold out, I think I saw.
Yeah. This is my first time, so I'm looking forward to it.
A first-time Blisser.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't exactly know what to expect, but I think it'll be good.
Love it. How about you, Beth?
I'm going to keep the music theme going. I'm actually leaving the studio and going directly to Interlochen tonight to see Iron and Wine.
Nice.
And I'm with her, so I'm very excited for that show.
Oh, that's exciting. Very, very exciting. I also have another show that I'm going to next week. 2 shows in a row.
My goodness.
Let's sing Taylor Swift.
Oh, yes.
fun.
We are going to that show.
Yeah, we're going next week. But we'll talk about that next week. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so we are going to be back next Friday. Art Bukowski is going to join us. You can be sure to subscribe to the show on all platforms at crystalfrost.com. You can follow us on social media. And subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. Easy to do that. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and Facebook. I have to say, Jacqueline from the Pit Spitters texted me and said, hey, send me a link to your podcast. I heard it was good. Yay, thank you, Jacqueline. Thanks for listening. Currently is a Compass local podcast produced by Pancake Boy Productions. Big thanks to our lead supporter, the wonderful Golden Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to West Shore Bank and the Coin Slot. And speaking of the Coin Slot, I had this idea of creating my own pinball machine, like using my favorite show in the world, which is the Golden Girls, and creating a Golden Girls pinball machine. And I wonder, do you have anything like that where you like feel so strongly about something that you would love to see it in pinball form?
I feel like we're big pinball fans. Most of mine, like, because all the good concepts are typically out there. Like, I would have said Jaws. Jaws is one of my favorite pinball machines is out there. I was going to say Harry Potter, but Harry Potter is now becoming one. It seemed like a franchise that was missing one. So I'm with you. I think I'm on the Golden Girls.
Golden Girls.
Yeah.
How about you?
Okay, I think a good one would be the bear.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
There.
Yeah, they always got, they're like, chef. Yes, chef.
Just
They've
like
exactly.
rubbing your,
Yeah.
there's to say you're
10,000
sorry.
clocks
Yeah.
stressing everyone out.
Exactly. There's like so many good little moments that I think
that's
would
a-
be fun for
That's a
parents.
great
Fantastic
idea.
Thank you.
Fantastic idea. First, we have to do Golden Girls, then I will allow that.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
Sounds
second
good.
line. I'm totally fine with that.
That's amazing. Well, check out the Coin Slot. Lots of pinball to be had there. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next week.